Welcome to Power Up Your Practice, the go-to podcast for law firm owners and managing attorneys working on the business, not in it. I'm Ruby Powers, your guide into the heart of law practice management, bringing your insights from leading legal minds, trailblazing attorneys, and expert guests who provide practical perspectives on running your firm more effectively and efficiently. And before we dive in, I'm thrilled to announce that my latest book, Power Up Your Practice, is out and available on Amazon. It's packed with actionable advice for growing a successful law firm. Be sure to grab your copy today. And don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter for exclusive tips and resources. And if you're enjoying this podcast, we love your reviews. They help us reach more attorneys like you who are striving to build the practice of their dreams. Prepare to open your mind, be inspired, and power up your practice to the next level. Welcome back, everyone. This is another episode of Power Up Your Practice, and I'm your host, Ruby Powers, and I'm really excited about our guest today. We have Hilary Bowman, and she is she's been a practicing attorney for a while, and then now she's the founder and CEO of Querious, a platform designed to bring secure, ethical, and practical AI. And it's in a whole other genre that we were just discussing that hasn't existed yet until she had Querious. So, we met at the ABA Tech Show where she was a prestigious. Her company won the startup AILA first place. That's awesome, and that's really prestigious. And because you've got a lot of people in the room very skeptical. Is this new? What can it do? And is it going to pass the test of time? But anyway, Hilary, welcome to our show. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So, not only did you win Startup AILA, but you also something happened just recently. Last week, you said?
Yes. Yes, we were selected for the ILTA Startup Hub. So we were one of 15 companies that participated at the conference last week. And yes, we were selected for the AILA Innovators Tech Spotlight that's coming up in September.
Yeah, awesome. And so we'll be there in Boston together. And I'm helping showcase those spotlight winners. And there was only 8 this year, less than last year, so that we decided to choose from. So that's a big honor, and excited to introduce you to a lot of the immigration community as well. But Querious can help individuals from in all areas, practices of law, or probably in any capacity, really. But it sounds like. But tell us a little bit more what it is for those who are just chiming in and are curious about what.
Sure.
It is.
Yes. So Querious is the first legal conversational intelligence platform. And what we mean by that is it is a product that joins your virtual client conversations. And during the meeting, it helps you deliver sharper advice by spotting legal issues, suggesting relevant questions, and pulling in relevant legal content. After the meeting, it helps you reduce the administrative burden of those client conversations. So it summarizes your meeting with a notes document. It provides a summary email that you can use to send to a colleague or to a client. And it also drafts your billing narrative and timestamp associated with that conversation. So the goal is maximize the time you're spending with your clients in the conversation, minimize the administrative work that you have coming out of those conversations.
Okay, so does it integrate with like Zoom, or you're in a Querious like platform, or like how does that work practically?
Yes. So we are integrated with Microsoft Teams, Zoom, and Google Meet. So the way that we connect with an attorney user is we integrate with their calendar. That's actually the connection. So if you have a Microsoft calendar or a Google calendar, that is where we can see your schedule, your upcoming meetings, and then our product will join those meetings.
Oh, okay. But I have a Google Calendar, but I use Zoom instead of Google Meets, or depending on which one I want to use. Can it think that through?
It can, yes. Okay. Yes. So interestingly, when we first started building it, we were very focused on Microsoft Outlook, Microsoft Teams, just because it was all in the same environment. And we quickly realized that the modern lawyer, as you have just explained, uses sometimes some combination of all of those different platforms. And so we had to kind of take a step back, rebuild the product, and today, yes, it is very versatile.
It is sort of funny when you think about it, but the reason we do it is I like Zoom over Google Meets. No offense, Google Meets, but
Mhm.
and also like we only have a few paid accounts, and so there's been traffic jams where we kick people out sometimes. So usually Google Meets is more of like our internal meetings, and Zoom is like our outward facing, but it depends
Mhm.
on things. Anyway, that's a side conversation, but okay. So, but and then what was the area that you say this? Because I feel like, having gone to ABA Tech Show a lot the last several years,
Mhm.
I feel like there's these new genres that didn't even exist because you're like, okay, I know what a CRM is, I know what case management is, I know, but like there's new things popping up, like client service, client experience. Like we have HONA and case status, for example. But what do you call the area that you're in?
Yes, yes, we call it legal conversational intelligence. So our goal is to help you have real-time insights about the conversation that's going on. And the reason why we feel that this is a really good use case for I actually think back to my personal experience practicing as a healthcare attorney, and client conversations are really at the heart of what we do as lawyers, right? I mean, it's where you're earning your clients' trust, it's where you're winning their business. And I remember having conversations 10 years into my career where the question would be related to healthcare. It was in my practice area, but the set of facts was novel. So it would be something like, how can I use AI to summarize medical records? And in those moments, I remember thinking, I wish I could just ask better questions. I wish I could have prompts or leverage technology so that I could think of things that, maybe I'm focused on one aspect of what the client's asking, but surely there's some other details that I'm missing, or like trying to avoid those follow-up conversations, those follow-up emails. So we've really focused on leveraging AI in the client conversation. As I mentioned, it's a really high impact moment, right? When you're interacting with your client. And it's also high frequency for a lot of practices. We have attorney users that are saying, I'm in 5 to 8 client conversations a day. And so when you have something that is such a large part of your practice, it was surprising to me to find that when I looked at the legal tech market, there wasn't a product out there on the market when I started this, to help in those high impact, high frequency moments, the attorney client conversation.
Yeah, I agree. And so according to your estimate and your research, there's no one else in this genre of case management or this legal tech right now, the legal conversational intelligence.
Yes.
There's no one else. Yeah. Wow.
Yes, we had lots of CIOs, legal tech journalists stop by the booth even just last week at EltaCon, and they're like, "We haven't seen this before." So I've had validation of that point just recently.
So I think we were talking before we started a little bit like, so right now what people might be doing if they aren't using Querious that's more designed for this and has those added features, they
Mhm,
might be like using Fireflies, Fathom, Otter AI, what
mhm,
you name it, like to transcribe, summarize, record, and then maybe like running it through some type of an AI tool to like what's the next steps or to create email
mhm,
follow-ups because like in a consultation, I mean it's so much like we have to build
mhm,
rapport. I mean I wrote about this in my book. I tell my students about this. I tell my associates I'm training. You're building rapport, you're establishing the set of facts. You have to be good enough to know what to ask and so I could see why that additional
mhm,
prompt or to help guide you on maybe asking some more in real time. And then you have to give them the roadmap of what your solutions are or solution. And then I also give them the timeline and the legal fees. And then boom, hope it all can be done in 30 minutes or 60 minutes. And then I'm supposed to have enough time to keep notes. And then I'm supposed to have enough time to request the contract. And then
mhm.
I'm supposed to, I don't know, get a drink of water, move around for a second, and then start the next one. So like,
Yes.
yeah.
This is exactly why the legal industry needed Querious. It is just you have to simultaneously, I say this all the time, you have to issue spot, ask questions, develop a, connection with the client. And you're doing all of that when laws are constantly changing and clients are becoming more complex. And so it seemed like the moment where we needed to leverage technology in a way that's private, secure, and ethical to help us navigate these difficult conversations.
So giving the example I gave you with like
Mhm.
people trying to like I call it duct taping with the existing technology that they
Sure.
that they think was available to them, and
Mhm.
integrate it with what they have versus Querious. Like what are some of the differences?
Yes. So our product provides real time insights. We're actually analyzing the conversation, looking for legal issues, bringing you legal content without you having to prompt the product to do anything. So you speak and interact with the client as you normally would. And then in a sidebar that only you can see on the side of your virtual meeting screen, you can see these prompts about potential legal issues, questions, and relevant legal content. So that real-time insight component is very unique that you will not find from other note takers. Some note takers do real-time transcription or summarization, but we've taken it a step farther to do the legal analysis. The other area that I would say differentiates us from note takers is after the conversation, we by default do not retain the audio or transcription file of the entire conversation. So we wanted to build a product that provided attorneys with the benefit of note taking in a way that was private, secure, and ethical. So we do transcribe parts of the conversation as it's happening, but at the end of the meeting, that is discarded once the summary is produced. So the attorney at the end of the conversation has a detailed set of notes, a summary email, and then there isn't this transcript of every word you've ever said to your client floating out there. That's not our policy.
And then when you start using Querious, like at the beginning, like you have the client say, okay, where you let them know that you're recording or you're doing some type of well, not full recording, but you're having some type of recording procedure.
Yeah, great question. So we're very transparent. Of course, that's the communication ethical obligation is what comes to mind. You have to be transparent about what tools you're using when you're representing your clients. So we took that to heart when we designed the product. So you can see the bot in the meeting. So it's just a rectangle in your virtual meeting that appears. Today, the standard it's just the Querious branding, and then it does have a few sentences under it that describes we don't record all of your audio. We don't take a full transcript. We don't use your data to train AI. And if you don't consent to this, like please ask your organizer or host to remove it from the meeting. So that disclaimer language is extremely important, obviously, for just
Yeah.
ethical reasons, but then also in states that have two-party consent wiretapping laws that disclaimer is extremely important so that in two-party consent states you're not violating state law.
And that's so true. But the transparency about like trust, I think you said trust. I was thinking that's what you were saying. But like,
Mhm.
I was on a call with a client, a potential client yesterday. We were trying to finish up the strategy, and I
Mhm.
heard that this call is being recorded. And I was like, no, you aren't. Like, no, you get it. Like, and then it says this call is not being recorded. I was like, so are you currently recording this call? I was really upset at him because I was like,
Mhm.
you did not even ask me,
Yeah.
and then he was like, oh, it's because I don't speak the English as the first
Yeah.
language and I was going to run it through, a translator or whatever. I was like, yeah, but you could have asked me. Like anybody who does that without
Mhm.
me asking, like I'm really like, you just really like got into a deficit of my trust, and it's going to take a while, if at all, to come back up. Anyway,
Yeah.
so I guess I'm
Yeah.
a little passionate about that. But
I'm glad you brought up that point. So over the weekend, there was a news story that broke about one of these general AI note takers where it's a class action lawsuit against the note takers by meeting attendees who were not the customers, right? So it wasn't the attendees didn't subscribe to the note taker. It was someone else on the call, but
Wow.
those attendees didn't know that there was a recording. No one said your entire conversation's being recorded. And by the way, we're using that recording to train AI. And so now
Oh.
they formed a class action. And this is, again, because, there wasn't transparency, right? The person who was the customer agreed to the terms and conditions that included recordings and use of data to train AI, but those non-customers did not. So yeah, it's you really have to understand this space, and I think that's an advantage that we have, right? This product Querious was designed by practicing attorneys who understood, the ethical obligations, wiretapping laws, things like that, and so we've designed it so that you can comply with all of these considerations.
I was on a Zoom call recently, and they were using Fathom, and it says this call is being what's the word? Not it wasn't recorded; it was broadcast or something. I forgot what the word
Hmm,
was, and I was
okay.
like, "Wait, what?" And so we spent like 5 minutes trying to figure out like what was going on with that because I mean I've seen
Interesting.
like when you use like stream, not stream, yeah, you can. There's a way to connect something where you're doing
Streaming
anyway.
audio.
Yeah,
Yeah.
streaming. Yeah. Anyway, well, okay. So when you have this summary or the draft email, so the email has a summary of what happened in the call. Is
Mhm.
that like sent to a draft, or where does that go? And does the attorney review it before they send it off?
Sure. So the summary email is delivered to the attorney's inbox. So the attorney controls whether or not that's shared with a colleague or sent to the client. It can be easily edited. There's a separate set of notes that appears in an attorney's dashboard. So we have a website that you log into with your Microsoft or Google credentials. And so after every meeting, you have this nice, neatly organized notes document that you can reference. In both the summary email and the notes, I should mention, we actually pull out personal information when we analyze the conversation. We transcribe parts of it, we run it through large language models. We do all of that by first pulling out personal information. So, someone's name, the name of a company, a social security number, that doesn't end up in the summary. That's by
Mhm.
design. And then we also only use large language models that are deployed in our private cloud environment to analyze conversations. So we've taken additional steps to ensure that really sensitive information is not being exposed to like a public large language model. So, I think you mentioned earlier, there's ways to kind of achieve the same outcome that we are by, using a note taker, using like
Mhm.
a public large language model. Theoretically, that is true, right? You could come out with the same outcome with notes, but what we've done is created an architecture that reduces the risk of a breach, of affecting your ethical obligations, of confidentiality, of waiving privilege, things like that.
Because I think that's where we were talking about, like, a lot of times when you're bringing a new genre of tech or just even new tech in general, I guess, like there's a lot of educating out there and educating the consumer on why it's useful and how it's safe, and especially with us lawyers, like on the ethics, especially if we're afraid that we're doing something wrong. And so so is that where you spend a lot of time explaining the ethics behind it, or like logistics as well as the ethics, and how it's like you have the seal of approval from lawyers to do this?
Yes, yes. And actually, this entire journey started with me looking at the ABA model rules and thinking about, if this is the product that I would like to build, what are the ethical obligations that are implicated? And so I actually wrote a white paper before we wrote a single line of code, because I wanted to prove to myself that we could do it in a way that satisfied our ethical obligations in the legal industry. So it started there, but I've talked to attorneys who think a lot about these ethical issues. I've given webinars in Alabama and New York. Each of those sessions actually had over 400 attorneys. That people are very interested in the idea of using AI in these virtual conversations. And yeah, I have really enjoyed engaging with attorneys and having these discussions. And we feel very comfortable that the product we've built really does, allow attorneys to get the benefit of generative AI, right? The brainstorming, high-powered brainstorming using AI and summarization with mitigating the risks that their sensitive client information is breached.
Are you finding yourself overwhelmed with handling phone calls and spending endless hours on consultations that just don't qualify? Well, let me introduce you to Staffy Live, your ultimate solution for 24/7 live receptionist and intake services tailored specifically for law firms. Now picture this: empathetic, truly bilingual specialists who understand the intricacies of client care and are experts at asking all the right questions to qualifying callers efficiently. Now that with Staffy Live, you'll feel like you have a trusted partner by your side, ensuring only qualified consultations make it on your calendar and providing valuable follow-ups when needed. As someone who's been using Staffy Live for my own law firm, I couldn't be happier. And I guess what Staffy Live is now offering a generous 15-day free trial with no strings attached. You can head over to staffy.cc. That's stafi.cc and click Get Started. And don't forget to use the code RUBY, RUBY. Your future self will thank you. And when you have the summary email, is it written from like what a summary, like as if you were going to send that to the client, or which perspective is it written from, or can you tell it how to write it? Because usually I'm writing a summary. If I write a summary, it might be to the client, prospective client, saying, "This is what we talked about. This is what I need you to do. This is what the next steps are." But if it's written from like a different perspective, or then I have to change it. So anyway,
Yeah. So the structure today of the summary email is an overview, the legal issues, a recap of the legal issues flagged, and the follow-up items, any administrative follow-up items. So there's 3 sections to it. And it over time, I think we're definitely seeing how certain practice areas, how we could customize that summary email, even the notes. And those are features that we're thinking about. Like if we know that your practice area is immigration, or we know your practice area is healthcare, how does your summary email maybe have a slightly different format than someone who is very focused on M&A and transactional and revising contracts, things like that. So it's on our roadmap today. It is just a standard summary, as I mentioned, with those three sections though.
and actually that was my other question we had. Like, how do you have it be expert on so many different areas of law, or like where is it pulling the yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like, because immigration's changing like every minute. There's another memo out like every Friday, and I'm like, I'm too busy practicing law to keep up with all the
Right. And that is actually part of, again, why I felt like the world, our legal industry needed a tool like this, right? We, as humans, we cannot keep up with all of the developments. And so the thought is that as these legal issues are identified in the conversation, we pull in the latest content on that particular issue. So the way we do that today, as I mentioned, we're analyzing conversation while you are speaking to your client. As an issue is flagged by one large language model, that appears as a prompt in your sidebar to the attorney. And then after that, that issue is picked up by another large language model that then looks for relevant legal content. And so, as I mentioned, we generally use private large language models to analyze conversation. When we go and pull the content, obviously we need the most up-to-date information. There can't be a knowledge gap, right? You have to have a public large language model. And so we pull in content from carefully curated, publicly credible sources. So we've, within each of our 25 practice areas, we are able to really focus the large language model to say, retrieve content from these credible sources and summarize it for the attorney.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, and I was just thinking, like, I've been practicing, I guess, like 17 years, so I sort of know what to sort of say. But like, if you have a newer associate that's doing a consult, like that could be a nice little aid. I mean, it could be a crutch, but it also could be an aid to make sure that they're thinking about the right things and sort of prompting that conversation.
Yes, and I've heard attorney users say something like it could be training by automation, right? So when
Mm.
I started as an attorney, I sat in a conference room next to a partner on a phone, right? We were doing conference calls on the phone, and that partner would hit the mute button and say, "This is a reimbursement issue. This is a
Oh,
licensure issue." That
yeah.
doesn't happen now, right? If we are predominantly, it's very common to have hybrid work arrangements, or we're just remote from our clients. I mean, that it we can be in an office and maybe not be near your client. So I think I think this is just an example of how we can leverage technology to flag issues even for junior attorneys in a way that provides them with feedback and prompts that help them think about the potential legal issues, even when a partner or supervisor isn't sharing that information with them.
And when I first heard about Querious, I was really excited too because I was like, yeah, we need something like this. Because otherwise, I mean, I'm in sort of that tech forward, and I'm sort of in a lot of different places like ABA Tech Show board and everything. So excited to have met you there in the Startup Alley and everything. But
Mhm.
we need like options like this to be able to make ourselves more efficient. I went to my daughter's a specialist pediatric specialist doctor's appointment, and the doctor came up to me with her phone and she goes, "I need your authority to authorize the recording of this meeting. We don't take notes anymore. We record them with AI and blah blah blah." And I was like, "Oh my God, I so need that." Yes, and so she just like showed me on her phone, like, I'm recording. Okay. And then what was cool about it too was that she was like having a discussion without, being on her
Typing.
typing and being, in front of the screen. Like she was like sort of sitting down in front, eye level with my daughter, like closer
Mhm.
between my daughter and myself, and trying to really have a conversation. And that's
Mhm.
one of the things that I've noticed is like when a client comes in person, I want to be able to not be typing too much or too distracted by the devices.
Mhm.
But anyway, at the end of it, I was quite fascinated because like she didn't type anything the whole time, but it said
Mhm.
like the plan, the medicine, the do, the this, the that, and like what the next steps were. And it was pretty much in real time. And so I
Mhm.
was like, yes, I need that because I am doing too many back to backs and I don't have enough time to put all the details.
Yes. Yes, and that actually was part of my thought process because I was a healthcare attorney. I thought medicine has clinical decision support tools, right? And sales has similar, right, customer service and sales support technologies. Why doesn't law have something like this? We are having very complex conversations with our clients, and it also would be nice to be hands free, right? To just focus on what the client is saying and then have some prompts to help us brainstorm, like, what have I missed, what's maybe outside of my practice area that I didn't think of. All of these areas can be a value add to your client, right? If you can get out all of that information during the conversation while they're in front of you, just how much better can we how much more can we improve our legal services?
So what are some of the what do people say that use your product? Like what they say some of the best features of it? Like or what, like, saving them time or more detailed notes, or what are
Yes.
some of the things they say?
Yeah, so the more experienced attorneys, I think the value add has been identifying legal issues that are outside of their practice area. So a healthcare attorney using it can better identify a potential tax issue or a corporate issue that could be referred to a colleague, or if there are, if they don't have a colleague, they could even refer that out to another firm. All of that just adds to the client getting better services, right? If they can have sort of a relationship partner that helps them identify the full universe of legal issues without having to have, lots of different touch points, that's a better experience for the client. So I think that's been probably the most common feedback that we've heard. And then we've also heard the part about, we talked about the training by automation for more junior attorneys. This is a way to flag issues with automation without having that supervisor actively involved. And then it just facilitates, it improves the work that happens after the conversation. So if an associate has some idea of what the major legal issues were that were addressed in a conversation, they can go and do some research, some reading, maybe before they even go and talk to that partner about the
Mm.
conversation or about the work that needs to happen. And so it eliminates a lot of those post meeting, post client conversation interactions that really aren't, if you're strictly thinking about fees and billing, right? A lot of those, if you're billing by the hour, you're not billing for the mentoring part of it.
Yeah, that's true. When I was looking, exploring what options to do, I was mostly looking at the note taking. There's this other
Mhm.
thing called like High Doc or something, and it's like a way to record. And then I think I don't know exactly what tech it uses, but
Mhm.
another colleague mentioned it to me, and then he sort of runs the transcript through some AI tools, and then but ultimately you're right, like you can be generous and send an email summary. Maybe you don't have the bandwidth or don't do that.
Mhm.
You need the notes for your internal notes. You need, if there's a contract request, the instructions for that, the contract, the fees, and so on. And then for the reason why the summary of notes are so valuable is because like we have a debriefing. One, if someone hired, once they hire, we
Mhm.
debrief the legal assistant or attorney working on it. But if the notes are not so good, you have to rely more a little bit on memory, and
Mhm.
that can get difficult if you're doing a lot more volume or a lot of time has passed in between. So I mean, I agree with you. I think we should be using more of these types of programs. And Grace sounds like a really good solution. It just I think we're probably a combination of concern about the ethics or the
Mhm.
logistics and the integration and everything. But I'm thinking once I start using a tool like this that, or Querious, that I'd be able to save a lot of time and
Mhm.
be able to feel more at ease moving from one consult to the next.
And that has been a huge emphasis of the design of our product is we don't want the attorney to have to prompt it to do anything or take extra action. So the insights during the meeting, it's we prompt it behind the scenes. So the information you're getting about legal issues and questions, we're
Mhm.
telling the product what to do so that you can just speak in the way that you normally would with your client. And same with afterwards. You don't have to ask Querious to generate a summary email or prompt it to generate notes. All of that happens automatically so that you can focus on the higher value work with your clients.
And what about languages? Can you speak in other languages on the calls?
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing that up. So that is one of the unique features. The AI that we are using to understand the conversation, it can understand multiple languages. So we've tested it with Spanish and Dutch, but it does understand lots of different languages and dialects. The output to the attorney, both in the meeting and after the meeting, is still in English, but
Okay. That's
it does support understanding conversations that can happen in multiple different languages.
That that sounds, that's necessary. Yeah, 'cause, um, and you know what I've also thought about sometimes, and this is another thing I need a tool built like this, is like the client will tell me this like really long story that's like they're basically their asylum statement or something, and I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, you just told me, yeah, go put that in writing. That's what I need you to do, and because they're better at talking than they are about writing, I've noticed most of
Mhm.
people. And so anyway, but that's great that you can do it in other languages. I think there's a lot so much more AI tools that making it easier to communicate with people
Mhm.
in other languages and not having to be slowed down by waiting for a translator or some other you know,
Mhm.
live meeting.
Mhm.
Well, wow, I think this is a lot to take in, and I think like no matter what an individual or lawyer listening is whatever program they might be trying to use or have an
Mhm.
experiment with queries. This gives us a lot of food for thought, and honestly, I'm constantly trying to find ways to be more efficient, reduce errors, increase my time ability. So I could see how this could is going to be a really big hit. and get the Startup Alley and Innovation and ILTA, all these different awards recently. You've
Thank you.
Sounds like you're hitting a good stride here, and a lot of people, it's resonating with a lot in this legal field. Well, what would you? Well, now I want to transition to my other fun
Sure.
questions.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think we did talk enough a lot about like ethics. Like we've a lot of that's usually one of the biggest ones that
Mhm.
the people who are holding out on. And I think what I've started to notice, and I don't think it's like a blanket statement, but if
Mhm.
the software is specifically for lawyers, maybe even designed by lawyers originally, I feel
Mhm.
like you're probably in a better place than if you're just using some program that's area agnostic. I don't know. What's your thoughts on that?
I think so. I especially in this space about leveraging AI in attorney-client conversations, we have truly put a lot of thought into it. I communicate with the engineers on a daily basis. We have been very thoughtful. We have vetted it with practicing attorneys. So I think in our case, I feel really good about a this tool that is purpose built for the legal industry, right? I think it takes both analysis of the legal issues as well as just practical use to vet that. I would be, hesitant to just pick up any general purpose tool for the reason I mentioned earlier in the conversation about, these general purpose note takers that record all of the conversation. They're certainly inexpensive. They do provide support and summarization. Those are great benefits, but there are risks when the data is being used to train AI. You do have to really do your due diligence. And so I think that just means practically for attorneys where we haven't thought of ourselves as tech attorneys, right? We're like, no, but I'm an immigration attorney. I'm a healthcare attorney. We all have to be tech attorneys at this point. We have to be able to ask basic questions about how to use my data, where is it stored, how long do you retain it, right? All of these have to become basic questions that we all ask about adopting new technology because things are changing rapidly. And I think you can't just assume someone else has to ask those questions. I think we all have to sort of take that upon ourselves. And we've seen that, right, with states in North Carolina, for instance, to maintain my license, I have to take a certain amount of technology credits every 2 years. So I think we've seen the profession going in that way, but I think all of us just have to have a little bit different mindset about adopting technology and doing our due diligence.
No, I definitely agree. And that I've always really been fascinated by technology, so it was just sort of like my second nature.
Mhm.
But for a lot of those who it's not, it can be a little bit harder to trend to sort of stay abreast of all the changes and the ethics
Mhm.
but yeah, I mean, even just like how these different genres of legal tech are popping up the last couple of
Yeah.
years. Yeah, you didn't know you needed it, but now you do. Like Um, well, what is your favorite board game or game?
So I I have two small kids
Yeah.
and my world right now is it's not quite board games, but it's puzzles. Those are
Okay.
it's a very, very popular activity. They love puzzles of all sorts.
Oh, yeah, and not losing the pieces of the puzzle,
Yeah,
right?
that's that is a challenge.
What would you consider your superpower?
I think it's empathy. I think being able to put myself, in someone else's shoes.
Oh, that's a good one. Um, I'm pretty empathetic myself, so I get you on that one. Um, what would you say is a habit that contributes to your success?
I think constantly prioritizing what is important
Mm.
is really has paid off recently when you're working on a company and there's a lot going on. It's easy to be distracted or pulled in a lot of different directions, but I really had advisors around me and people on my team just say, just take a step back, right? What is the most important thing that needs to happen? And so the phrase ruthless prioritization, I've seen that a lot recently. I did not come up with that, by the way, but whoever gets credit for that, I think that is really, that's been so helpful to just stay, calm and focused on what matters and what's going to add value to, whatever you're working on.
Oh yeah, that's definitely needed. And when you have, I don't know, I'm just thinking about when I have team members that are not really good at that sort of drives me crazy because I'm like,
Yeah.
it's like a very dynamic space. You got to
Yeah.
keep moving.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And what's a favorite book or podcast that you would recommend?
Yeah. So, in the spirit of talking about AI, a podcast that I listen to almost on a daily basis is the AI Daily Brief. So, it
Oh,
goes through the headlines in AI. And especially if you're just starting out in this space, every episode sort of just breaks down what's the major headlines in AI and why that's important. And so, it has really helped me over the past 2 years just kind of understand, what's going on in the industry, what are the new models that are coming out, who are the key players, all of that, and it's just done in a way that's really like easy to follow and yeah,
that's
practical.
awesome because I was on, and it's like in the beginning I was on a lot of like little newsletters that were giving the summaries, but then I started not really reading them. But I think if I could just incorporate listening to the key highlights, that would probably be really good. Because there's so much change, and then just sort of seeing
Yeah.
the trends. And yeah, like I go to a lot of legal tech conferences, and sort of paying attention. Actually, this coming week we're working on planning out ABA Tech Show.
Wow,
So
already.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's August, and we're gonna, yeah, it's not until March, but we have to plan so far in advance. Well, where can people find you online, and also like what upcoming conferences are you going to be at, or where can they find Querious?
Sure. So our landing page is querious.ai. So it's QUERIOUS.ai. And if you're interested in trying the product, you can go to our landing page. You can actually try it for free in 10 meetings, in 10 virtual meetings by just simply creating an account and connecting your calendar. We will also be at some upcoming legal tech events. So, as I mentioned earlier, we'll be at AILA, for the technology spotlight in Boston in September. And we are also planning to be at ClioCon in Boston again in the middle of October. So lots of travel to the Northeast. And yeah, we hope to meet people in person there, but also always happy to have a virtual conversation, do a demo of the product that's specific to your practice area. My email address is Hilary, Hilary at Querious.ai. So always excited to connect with attorneys.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I'm sure the world will hear a lot more about Querious in the future, and I'm glad that we could connect. And I think we didn't even talk about like North Carolina, but I went to UNC, and so
Oh,
I got the benefit of living in North Carolina for two years, and I visited U of H my last year, so I really
oh,
enjoyed it. Yeah.
nice. Yeah, I'm not from North Carolina originally, but we've been here for 12 years and it feels like
Oh,
home. Yeah.
you have like 4 seasons. That's unlike
We do.
Texas, where it's like basically one or two summers. I don't know, really hot and not as hot. I don't know. That's
Okay.
yeah.
That's
Yeah, anytime I can go back to North Carolina, I'm like, "Oh, this was nice, wasn't it?"
Yeah, it's been a nice place, and actually it's where I've practiced law for my whole career, so there's been a lot of, professional opportunities as well, which has been great.
Awesome. Well, I see a bright future, and I think this
Thank
is
you.
definitely an area that lawyers needed more of. And it's crazy how it's always like in another field before it comes to ours. So
I know.
you can help bring it over to us. But anyway, thanks everyone for listening. Thank you, Hillary, for joining us today and showing us more about your Querious. And everyone, feel free to stay in touch on the school community, on the Power Hub, as well as feel free to check out the book Power Up Your Practice on Amazon. And I will be at a lot of conferences that she mentioned later on this fall. So feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, and looking forward to connecting. Thanks again. Take care. Thank you for tuning in to the Power Up Your Practice Law Practice Management podcast. I'm your host, Ruby Powers, and it's been a pleasure sharing this time with you. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave us a review, tell someone else about us, and we'd love to get this podcast shared with others to reach more listeners like you. Don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter for exclusive content, tips, and updates straight to your inbox. And exciting news, our book, The Power Up Your Practice, is out and available on Amazon. It's packed with strategies, 25 chapters, to help you elevate your practice and achieve your goals. So join us next week as we dive into more advice and insight on law practice management. We'll see you next time.